Derek Ritchie reporting for the Straight Red Card. Recently, I compiled the base salary totals for each MLS team just to see if we could pry any meaning at all out of what turned out to be one of the highest spending salary seasons in the league's history. As the regular season draws to a close and we compare team base salary totals with team results, we can tentatively conclude a couple of things if you evaluate the numbers with an NFL-sized concussion.
Ouch.
So bad conclusion number one.
All right.
If you want to make the MLS playoffs and you plan on spending money on designated players, the evidence says you better spend a nice chunk of change.
All right.
Sort of spending big money on big-name players for designated players won't cut it. Just ask Toronto and Chicago about sort of half-ass spending on designated players.
All right.
I mean, Toronto signed a guy named after a horrible 80s band, Mista.
Love it.
And almost no one had even heard of him before he came over.
I had.
Not to mention a guy who hadn't even been decent, really, since maybe 2006 with Valencia.
That's true.
Now, if your new designated player can't even get some mild press from the average mainstream media, then he's probably not big enough to be your designated player.
Yep.
And DeGuzman who? General rule. Canadians cannot be designated players.
Why not?
Ever. Okay, maybe not ever, but someone in Toronto didn't read the rule book on that one.
Probably not.
Now, folks, if you're going to go for a designated player, or a DP, as they call them, the evidence says you better whip it out and dig in good.
Really?
Your wallet, that is.
Oh.
Big spenders like the LA Galaxy, $10 million, and the New York Red Bulls, $15 million, both sailed into the playoffs with the biggest base salaries in the MLS this season. Now, never mind that the players both teams were paying the big bucks to hardly played until mid-season, when things were already off to a good start. The Galaxy were rubbing their opponents' faces into the proverbial dog poo for most of the season when Beckham finally recovered from that Achilles injury caused by the weight of the ink on his skin when he took a step forward while leaning backwards somewhere in Italy.
No.
Seriously, David, isn't it time to start expressing yourself in a different way? You're starting to look like a hoarder of tattoos.
That's true.
And how about that Thierry Henry and his non-finishing flub so far? And Marquez's solid play only showed up a couple of months ago to make the Red Bulls look more like the Cosmos, at least on paper.
Not really.
Okay, well, it's only 3 star players, and Angel looks like he'll be exiting after the season anyhow.
He will.
The moral of the story is spend a lot of money, $10 million and up preferably, on players that won't play much all season or show up until mid-season. Here's a theory I like to throw around to make myself look thoughtful.
All right.
Regardless of whether they play a lot, marquee players make the rest of your team feel like marquee teammates on a marquee team. This leads to marquee play and marquee results and hot girlfriends, and if you're not buying that load of crap, well, either am I. But it sure sounded good when I pulled it out of my rear end area this morning.
Ew.
So crappy conclusion number 2 is actually not so crappy. The other way to make the playoff is to consciously decide to be one of the bottom 3 spenders in the league.
Okay.
If so, you have about a 66% chance of making the playoffs. See, both Real Salt Lake and San Jose spent under $2.3 million and finished at the bottom of the base of the salary table. But that didn't faze Real Salt Lake or Jason Kreis. And Kyle Beckerman, who even played with a baby woolly mammoth on the top of his head all season, still led his team to a top position on the table. San Jose got there as well. The only team who didn't make it to the playoffs this season in the bottom 3 spenders was Chivas USA, who did what you're supposed to do when you buy things on the cheap. In this case, a team. You fall apart, you break up, or you fail to work.
Right.
And someone will invariably ask me why I'm using the base salary figures per team instead of the actual compensated dollars per player and team. The truth is, the base salary at least makes some sense to me and others, while I'm told compensated salaries might mean a lot of other things. I hear Freddie Lundberg, for instance, got $14,000 in extra compensation from Chicago when they delivered 1,000 pounds of bratwurst and creamed herring to his bungalow somewhere near Chicago.
Yeah, right.
And David Beckham supposedly receives, I don't know, $500K in coupons each season to his favorite local tattoo parlor from the LA Galaxy. Even Breck Shea gets $25K in condoms each season as compensation from SC Dallas. Hey, you got to make sure the kid is staying safe whilst he dips his brush in the paint, if you know what I mean.
I know what you
In the end, there really aren't many conclusions you can draw from the MLS salary figures, except that it really doesn't seem to matter what you spend. Some of the highest spenders and the lowest spenders make it to the playoffs, and everything else in between.
Right.
Stay tuned for next week when, amongst other groundbreaking research, I'll discuss how having at least 5 players whose last name starts with a B might lead a team to the league's best record, and why B actually stands for best. This has been Derek Ritchie for the Straight Red Card. Good night.